Hey, Tianan. Howdy. Hey, Brendan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
We had a release cut today. Although it looks like Josh had some issues on the merge. I won't complain since it was only an RC. So we don't actually have an agenda today. Nothing was on the list. I will say a big thank you to Josh for getting the release out. Distribution spec, another RC out there. Looks like chaos on that merge.
Yep, did the accidental squash again, so I
Oops.
made some administrative liberties.
I won't complain for an RC, but on a GA, we probably would have needed to, I don't know if you have to do like a force push to go back to the previous commit that we had.
That's what I did.
But you changed the
Right.
digest, so you made a new commit there somehow.
No, I forced, so the commit before the merge, which was like a conformance thing, forced that in, and then manually did the merge on my machine and then forced that on. So sorry, never again.
You're only getting away with that one because it's an RC. So I also saw that you had asked for reviews on a couple of older PRs. Did you want to talk about those at all?
Are you talking to me?
I don't know if it came up because of the force push or something, but I got pinged that said, hey, Josh wants you to review this thing. Talking some old PRs like 232. What else got queued up here today? Yeah, and the proxying section. So I think 66 as well. Those two fairly old PRs have been sitting out for a while. I got pinged on today and said, hey, Josh, I want you to look at this.
Yeah, that's probably a weird effect of what I did. So sorry, those are really old. Yeah, probably existing PRs had to like rebase.
Yeah, you did something funny. I wasn't sure if you were trying to clear those out. I was like, well, I don't know if we want to put more changes in right before a release. If we're trying to get the release candidate to call it GA, that seems kind of silly. If no one else has things, I can throw up a, yeah, no new items. That's a good plan. I don't have a new item for coming out with the GA release or anything like that, but I was kind of playing with this last week or so, which is that I am not a fan. Let me move some things out of the way because this is all kinds of confusing for me. I'm not a fan of the distribution spec itself, just the layout of it and trying to follow stuff. You get into here and it's like nested down that this is a push of something. It's kind of hard to follow what we're getting into. And so I was thinking, how would I rewrite this in some way? And so I just kind of started taking a stab at some of the markdown a little bit. I was wondering if it made sense to just make the whole API endpoint section more of a first-class citizen, saying, here's the endpoint for a poll, and we have to like categorize all of our stuff because we have certain things that say this is a poll type request versus push type request for conformance and whatnot. Method is get, the path is this, we got headers on this thing, and then kind of go through some bullets under that of saying, here's kind of part of our spec of what a poll means, all the different shoulds and musts and whatnot on this thing. So I was brainstorming if it made sense to try to do a little redesign of this, not for getting the GA out, but something to think about for post GA of would it make sense to make this a prettier spec to read, or do people like the way it reads today? I was thinking Swagger too. The challenge for me with Swagger, I think, was I wasn't sure. A lot of it kind of depends on some code that you're importing in from if you're loading that in. And so that wouldn't quite work because we don't have code so much, we're just writing a spec. But the other half is, does that give us a good way to put all these shoulds and musts and whatnot for all the fields in there? Have you tried that before, Sajay?
Yeah, getting the swagger out of that was not straightforward, but doable. Honestly speaking, the Docker docs for the HTTP registry spec is really good. This is more condensed and kind of keeps it open to interpretation. So
Yeah, I also went thought that examples are good too. So kind of put something in there that says, here's the request, here's the response. What you're expecting to see is just like an example for end users to look at. So 1 vote for the Docker docs, no vote for the distribution spec docs.
actually, my vote was for maybe look, like, could we align or could we kind of learn something from the Docker docs to take it over to the distribution docs? Do we want to? Again, this is a tough one because you'll have to rewrite and re-review the whole thing, so it'll take time.
Yeah. As bad as that sounds, though, give you an idea of my view here. Let me stop sharing for a second so I can pull another window up. I think I've got the distribution spec somewhere over here. So I just want to give you a concept of what it looks like on my side, which is everything looks chaotic. I'm not sure why it's saying that. The thing that's chaotic for me is that the whole thing is just filled with markdown inaccuracies saying, hey, all these things over here are invalid according to markdown. So my whole spec view is just highlighted of markdown warnings, yellow, 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 everywhere. So at some point, this is going to need to have some kind of reworking, in my opinion, to get it into some kind of markdown compliance. For linting, at least. It's quasi-valid markdown, but lenders are not happy with it. That'll be another one of those long-term ideas.
Or we can thin up the markdown linting. I think we used common notation with the other specs.
I've got image spec on my effort that I'm going to try to get a linter into at some point, but I didn't even want to try distribution spec yet.
Yeah.
It's too far gone. See what you're talking about for the ZOT stuff here.
Also trying to make it look good in a PDF that might have required certain linty things, right?
I think it's somewhere funny, but I think you're over here. Okay. Something about 310 that we were supposed to look at here. Just in general. It's got parameters, got responses and whatnot, but yeah, I'm trying to think of how we take this and expand it with all the description around this header should have this value with this kind of contents. And I'd have to dig in. Maybe Schweiger has a lot of that, but I just haven't dug in. That's not how I'd use it in the past. It wouldn't hurt to have a copy of this in there, though. Y'all are just silently throwing links in the chat, which are all good links. I don't know why. It's not just paste and link. Yeah, it's a rendered version of it, but the thing that gets me when we start rendering this stuff is that we're so nested down in our headers that these headers are hard to like pick up on when you're reading through. It's not always standing out that you're in a certain section. It's easy to scroll right past them. Just because we got so many layers down.
Who renders this? I mean, what workflow renders the distribution spec? This is still 1.1.0 is what my understanding is. There's no reference or anything.
September 2021. That I'm not sure.
Okay. Makes I'm just excited about the auth working group. That's where I'm gonna hopefully we can spend time.
That's your focus.
Honestly.
We have the auth working group. We have stuff happening for artifacts, and the artifact working group over in CNCF. Not sure where they're going to go with some of their suggestions, but it would be good for us to think about how you want to do some of that stuff over here as well. To incorporate what they're doing, to have whatever the OCI take on it is, to get something out with that. We will be busy. So other than thoughts on adding new like formats for some of this stuff and getting this milestone out there. Let's see. People throwing agenda items in here when I'm not looking. Conformance GitHub action. Josh had something you want to talk about there.
Sorry, I was in the other room. Hi.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a weird thing, but the action in the repo, maybe it's easier to share my screen for this. You see all right?
Yes.
Okay. So GitHub Actions, I've learned a lot in the past few years, but basically this file is like, I don't even know if things really work or advertised work like this anymore, but it basically runs this image and it passes, you're allowed to pass it environment variables. But what's the problem is if you try to run this action, which Zot is doing at main, it will always be tied to the 1.0.0 spec. So a simple fix here is we could push an image to latest tag and use that, or convert this to just like build, instead of using Docker, just build the binary with Go. We could make an argument to pass in like a spec version that you want to test against. But I just don't want to like change this if there's people out there relying on it. I don't know anyone besides Zot that's using this right now. But does it make sense that like what's that head will run what's that head though? Because you can also like do GitHub Actions with a tag and it would be linked. So that's another weird thing is like that image doesn't get pushed until after release. So this is running R2. Am I making sense?
You're making sense. What updates
Okay.
this file? Is it us or is it a
This is,
GitHub
yeah,
action?
this is manual.
Okay.
But yeah, I think
have-
the problem was I think Rom, I was chatting with Rom and Zot wasn't picking up our conformance changes. And I think they meant to be.
Yeah. The way I've done this is stealing a bunch of code from, I'm pretty sure it was ChainGuard, where they've got an action and it just has a release variable, version variable, whatever you want to call it, and a default value for that, which the default might be whatever the latest GA release is or something along those lines. And then instead of running an image, it would run a shell script and take all the different variables in there and interpret them. And so from that shell script, it could see, hey, there's an image, let me run that. There is this other thing. Because the shell script, it would be very flexible to be able to take different actions from that.
Josh, you're muted.
Thank you. I can go ahead and do this if there's no other thoughts on it. But yeah, taking like a commit or a reference, and you could just pin to a specific thing.
I mean, what you said makes sense to me. Like head running with head is probably what we want, right? Like we have moved everything in main already up. So why is the action still pinned to 1.0? I think in 1.0 branch, the action should be 1.0, but on main, it makes sense to kind of move it with whatever we have checked in.
Right. It's a
There's a chicken and egg.
There's kind of a weird thing because actions let you actually pin to tags. So like, how could I run?
Unless this
I
is
don't
a
know.
tag, you can't, because the digest at the end of line 11 comes as the output from this tag. And so you can't have this action YAML on the tag with the digest. That's the output of the tag.
I guess I'm saying get rid of Docker type, like make it to a shell type thing.
Yeah,
But
that's
if
what I
you
would
try
suggest.
to run it at the 1.0.0, it's getting this RC. It's
I would
dumb.
I would go with I don't know if I would pin it to a digest unless someone specifically asked for it. And then we can go with tags, and the default tag would just be latest. Run whatever the current conformance is that we have released as a GA. And the other tags, you can explicitly say, hey, I want to run the v1.0.0-rc2. And it would pull that image if you ask for it specifically.
So, okay. Without getting into details, that's not possible unless you write a shell script that does Docker
Yes.
run. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, we know. All right. I will take a stab. That's all.
Yeah. All the code that I've ever done is stolen from ChainGuard, which means you probably know it better than I do. Well, lightly stolen, because you guys write good examples for me.
What did you do a couple of years ago?
Ask Vince. I think Vince might have kicked out the last one. I did one. I don't know. I think I got lucky in making it work.
So for all the requests for comments, looking at other milestone issue there, we've got the request sitting out. I've had a few people come back and say on some of the issues out there that they've seen it. No big concerns from their side. They'll get working on it once we GA. Other people are saying they'll get around to it when they get a chance. Everybody's busy as always. Nobody's saying, no, wait, hold up, don't do it. But it might just be lack of time from people to actually dig through what we changed. I think that is everything from our limited agenda. Does anybody have other items you want to talk about?
What's the next step for the working group if we have nothing else on the agenda?
Do we need to have someone throw out a doodle poll to have a weekly meeting? probably get some space for a GitHub repo to put some content in there. And start doing things like electing a chair and whatnot, or something like that. I nominate Sajay.
I walked into that one. The reason is to get things like redirects and all sorted out in the specification. I think we wanted to clarify the authentication part also. That's what I remember Mike Brown was asking before. To me, I just wanted, my goal was to kind of clarify that thing as well. But is this more like, have you thought about what it means? Is it more about documenting the implementation, or what do we have an outline of what we plan to do with that?
When I've done authentication on my side, I was trying as best I can to stick to HTTP specs themselves, go a little bit more upstream and say, hey, I've got a www authenticate header. Let me follow that and do exactly what you would normally do. So I skipped the ping of the V2 API and I just went straight to the resource I was trying to query. I've tried to do a manifest pull or something like that. And then the registry will tell me, no, wait, you can't do that. You need to go over here. And so then I'll go over and do the authentication. That sort of shortcutting and following the specs works sometimes. And then there are registries out there that expect you to follow the Docker method of actually generating the scope headers or the scope fields on those requests and whatnot.
And HTTP supports extensions. So do you mean, which HTTP do you mean? You know, which release? Are you supporting extensions? What kind? Why? I think we need to have some, you know, hopefully we can do a get together. That would be cool on the work group.
Yeah. Some of the another one of the challenges I ran into, in addition to some registries not giving me a proper request, if I just did like the shortcut and just try to request directly, is if you're trying to copy between repos, you're doing a cross repo blob mount. You need to authenticate into 2 repos technically to do that.
Oh,
but nobody does that.
Okay, cross-mount authentication is not even written up anywhere, and people assume they understand.
No. There
No
was
one
some,
does this
there was some
correctly.
stuff in there for Docker for extern, but yeah,
Everyone does.
Nobody
this
has
wrong.
touched that at all.
no.
And John hates me because I was the one that tried to do that and broke his whole registry. And he was just like, saw the issue and said, close, not working on this, leaving the company now.
Well, at least we fail correctly. I mean, like if you do this with Docker Hub, it just fails outright, and that's frustrating. Yeah, I feel like no one really follows any of the specs, and so they're kind of useless. Like for at least for Docker's authentication docs, you're supposed to return the permitted subset of requested scopes. But they'll fail if you request an invalid scope. And then on the cross repo mount, they're supposed to you should return a certain error code and not fail, but they were or are or may in the future return to failing if you don't have authentication to mount from a place. So I've written a bunch of code that assumes that registries will like fail correctly, but no one fails correctly. And so I just retry everything like 3 times. It's great.
Yeah, I've got multiple paths of my own where I say, assuming a registry has implemented the specs nicely, I can just go through and do the lazy. But then there's this extra field that says, well, some registries don't like it when you authenticate into multiple repos simultaneously. So treat each individual repo as a separate authentication space. Even though I'm talking to the exact same server, keep their individual scopes separate for each repo. Yeah, it's a mess.
Currently dealing with a vendor who, if you do a request where you have previously asked for push scopes, it will fail But if you have only pull scopes, it will succeed. When you do a get or a head. Why?
Yeah, the promotion from pull to push was that was one of them. You want to change that end field from having both to just, or having two separate scopes to having one scope with both options on there.
Yeah, I agree with John there. We're going to need to cover that in the work group.
Howdy, what you got?
As long
I-
as who's going to authenticate these creds. Do we need one authentication for push, one for pull? Probably, or at least configurable in that way. But we can't make that a requirement. We can only list it as a nice to have, I guess. It's going to be a fun work group. Auth. Looking forward to it.
Go ahead, Toddy.
Yeah, I want to throw the catalog in the mix, actually. That's also requires different type of authentication. And of course, when you try to list a catalog, and you get very confusing messages for every registry.
Not just catalog, but as we start to incorporate different extensions, maybe an extension to do a search query wants a different kind of authentication than a pull or a put. And so now you've got to have 3, 4, 5 different kinds of authentication types in there, depending on what the registry wants. And yeah, to your question, Sajay, what are we going to propose in the working group? I want to try to be compatible with what most people have out there, while leaning towards here's the vision, the goal, where we want to try to get to, some kind of path there. But I don't want to instantly say if you go with the OCI auth, you're going to break 75% of the registries. That'll be
Don't say OCI auth. Don't do that.
Don't name it yet.
Don't give that a name. We haven't started the work group yet, but I think it's more of a, it should be pluggable, and here are the features, and here are the scenarios, and here's some suggested patterns that we need to solve in OCI around auth, including that auth for push versus auth for pull should be an option available, and then there should be some configuration such that the client, can find out right, what's available by the registry, and or the other way around, right? There probably needs to be a header negotiation, and that we could specify, right? Some kind of negotiation between the registry and the client, so that we can find out the auth capabilities that are available and can be used by, right, usefully functional by the underlying code, so that we can then expose that as an API through CRI to Kubernetes, so they can put it in a pod spec as a policy. Yay! Sorry.
So, Sajay, when you were leading up this working group and getting all the feedback from people, I think that having a nice section of the document saying all the different use cases we want to solve will be useful, because we're going to have a lot of them.
Okay. At this point, I'm just paper pushing. I'm just going to send out a doodle poll, get that started. It looks like there's a lot to discuss. Getting a brain dump from John Johnson and folks is going to be an interesting effort here.
Yeah, sit down with each of the clouds individually, go over their current and future plans for what they need and the specs, that sort of thing. And Kubernetes will need to get together with SIG security, yada, yada, right?
Right. So I'll send out a doodle poll, at least share it on Slack, and maybe email the distribution list also. And put it on the issue, right? That was a working group issue. Or
Thanks.
Well, there was a
Especially
Well,
in summer,
it's not been
getting
close,
it
so yeah.
started up and running over the summer is going to be hard. A lot of people are taking vacations right now.
I'm guessing it'll take maybe a couple of weeks before people can get together and agree on a time also.
Yeah. Some countries take the entire month of August off. So
When you're back in September, what does your calendar look like?
Exactly.
You just do a kickoff meeting at KubeCon.
Yeah.
Give up and wait till November.
Well, maybe if we have a framework going into KubeCon, we can get together and pull in a lot of people in a working group session. A reason to go to KubeCon. Authentication.
I feel like you don't need to have a reason to go to KubeCon. It's always a great thing to go to. I just have yet to have a chance to go.
Another reason. Yeah, I keep hoping it'll be like Iana. You can just point. Somebody else has already done this for it. And I'm sure to some it's already happened. We'll get
When
into
I
it.
was kind of throwing out my little spitballing for what the spec change could look like on distribution spec, I was specifically keeping a whole section there saying, hey, here are all the common things we're doing, and here are all the IANA pointers to all the different places where it's already been done. Just follow their specs.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check in on the people who haven't spoken yet. Any other topics that others wanted to discuss? I think we can ramble on for a long time, but just checking in.
I'll just introduce myself quickly. My name is Greg, and I'm fairly new to the FreeBSD Foundation, and so I'm just trying to learn. So I appreciate this call being opened. Yeah, I learned a little bit about OCI. So I used to work at the Linux Foundation, so I knew of OCI, and the people that I used to work with have long since stopped working on this project. But I remember hearing about it when I was there. I was more like on the Node.js side of things, was more my thing. But anyway, I heard about RunJ and just some interesting things happening. And so I'm just here to sort of learn right now. But my goal longer term is to try to find resources within the FreeBSD community who can help with y'all upstream, right? So, you know, that's my interest, right? Is to be a rallying person.
Like, we can put you on the agenda in a future call and get people to come in that are interested in FreeBSD.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you talked to Samuel Karp yet? He did an.
I've traded a couple messages with him. Yeah. And, and I just know that like he's done just a phenomenal job with RunJ, but it's been just him. And so he's looking for help. So yeah. And so am I, right? So I'm sort of like actively working, the community to find people who want to pitch in. Right. But I'll be better at doing that the more I know about OCI. So that's my purpose of being here, is really just to learn. So thank you for having this call and allowing me to just listen in. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Extending to additional platforms has always been a goal for OCI, like Windows, right? So yeah, we definitely would like to have FreeBSD step in more, for platform specific security issues, set up container issues. And that's going to require your help. Your FreeBSD user helps. I've got a few instances of FreeBSD servers on my boxes right over there.
Nice. Love to hear it. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned it on our. Yeah, I mentioned it on our Discord channel, and some folks chimed in with some thinking around, bringing up or enabling OCI support in Beehive. Beehive is sort of the FreeBSD version of KVM. But so the more I know, the better I'll be able to sort of pull in the right people. So anyway, that's pretty much it. So thanks again. Appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Greg, I'm also just going to chime in. So this is a little past the scope of OCI, but just also mentioning that, I mean, me personally, as well as I think a lot of us who work on Moby, the thing you probably know is Docker. White Whale is running FreeBSD containers on FreeBSD or Linux containers on FreeBSD, which was once
Okay.
possible with the horrible 9,000 line
Yeah.
out of tree patch set that bit rotted somewhere in 2016. But
Right,
I'm just mentioning, like, you know, it worked
So-
at one point, but anyway, would love to also just mention, like, come join the Docker community Slack too if you want to. If you know, if I presumably, you know, at some point people will want to run Docker on FreeBSD, and especially I would love to chat with the people who are interested in doing that as somebody who's personally interested but has a hard time finding the time. At
Yep.
least being able to help interested contributors would be great if they do manifest.
Cool. Thanks. I appreciate that. And I'll and is that the link that, I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat. I'm a terrible multitasker. I know I'm like a dying breed. Is that one of the links that was in the chat, or is that there we go. Thank you.
I'm typing that from memory, so it may or may not work.
Fair enough. I can find it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But sweet. Appreciate that.
Awesome.
Yep, that worked.
I'm curious if your goal is strictly to run containers on FreeBSD, or if you're also looking at packaging other FreeBSD artifacts in a registry. The reason I ask is CNCF has an artifact working group that is talking about how to package
Okay.
all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like to say that, like, I'm much more technical than most sort of partnership and marketing people, but not nearly technical enough to really be able to answer at that level of specificity. One of the things that I am presently focused on, so I've been, you know, reaching out to various users of FreeBSD, one of which is like somebody who's using it in an enterprise environment, and you know, better cloud native support on FreeBSD is of high interest to them. And so, you know, I'm trying to put together a FreeBSD enterprise working group. One of the things would be, you know, some of the things are Microsoft related, like Active Directory and Samba, and stuff like that. So those are some threads we'll be pulling on. But another is this question of cloud native, and how do we make that better for people who want to have at least some of their server infrastructure running FreeBSD. So, but I'm really kind of at this point, I'm A, pretty early in this process, and B, really trying to facilitate bringing people together. But I've taken a note, and as we start to get this working, what I'm expecting is there's going to be like little sub teams within the enterprise working group, and some folks working on cloud native. And so this would be the kind of thing that I would love to point them at and kind of get them looking at. So sorry for taking so long to say I don't know, but I don't know.
To throw a little context on that, it's think along the lines of Helm charts when you're deploying to other things.
Yep.
We can put those in container registries. Other people are looking at this as saying, hey, NPM has their own package repo. Can that exist over in OCI or something like that? So
I see.
they're
Yeah.
looking at all kinds of other major repositories, and FreeBSD
Yeah.
clearly has their own repository of a whole bunch of packages.
Yeah. Yep.
And also to kind of like put it in concrete terms for you too, like, so running FreeBSD containers would be neat to like use all this tooling that we have, but even past that, I think a big pain point for a lot of us as a FreeBSD user myself is jail management. And having a whole bunch of pet jails. So for example, like on the distribution side, kind of what Brandon's referring to, like even if there's a way to distribute, you know, FreeBSD artifacts like a rootfs to build a jail from, and template a jail from those, that could be a big workflow improvement for a lot of people, especially in cloud environments. As today, you know, you're probably using Ansible or something to automate it. But for example, like again, to give you analogies from the Linux world, so like systemd and spawn, I think it's actually systemd machine. As well as LXC now understand how to take an OCI tarball and turn that into a rootfs. So you can take these container images that people have built, or this distribution mechanism that people have, and use that to trivially create your pet VMs or your, you know, your like Ansible managed jails or whatnot. Well, it would be LXC containers here. So being able to do that for jails, for example, would be really nice if like Bastille learned how to use an OCI layout that defined a FreeBSD rootfs. Like even that kind of thing, even outside of, you know, running FreeBSD containers would be quite productive.
Yeah, thanks for that context. I appreciate it. And, you know, and that is in fact one of the other things that we have heard from some enterprise users is, boy, it would be great if there was like a more consistent, more complete way to do jail and beehive management. So yeah, I love all of this, and I really appreciate the warm welcome. So thank you all very much, and I'm excited to keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did anybody else have agenda items today? Just want to get that RC out. Just happy the RC got out. Nobody said the GA word yet. Surprised nobody said that.
I did put it on the notes. I'm going to
It's
leave
release day.
It's
Are
in
we
the
ready for
syntax.
Let's release, Brandon.
it.
I was thinking maybe we could cut the GA soon. What do you think about that, Brandon?
On it, do it. You know, you
He
put a
stepped
bunch
away.
of
Let's
comments
do
out
it.
across the internet and said, hey, give us your feedback, even though you've had a year and a half to talk to us, and then no one said anything.
They actually have been coming back and saying things, but a lot of them just haven't had time to really absorb all the changes we made. Because when you go look at the diff since the 1.0 release, there have been a lot of changes made to our specs. So, Josh, with your blog post, I think that helped a lot for people to get a little
Yeah.
more condensed version than digging through all of those changes.
No, that was awesome.
I did get a comment from someone at my company that a diagram would help. So Brandon, I don't know if you want to donate a diagram to that post.
Looking for a draw.io diagram.
Or like
Graph
how the
viz.
subjects work.
Yeah,
and
that reference diagram
pointing.
that you have, Brandon, is really awesome. I think. Yeah.
More than happy to have something there. In fact, if you
You're
just go
muted,
grab it from
or
our
else
presentation repo,
I'm
you're
broken.
welcome to steal from there. What was that, John?
You were either muted or my computer was broken.
Your computer's broken.
Are you running BSD?
Oh, you're in jail.
Yeah. Oh, ouch. But relatable. But relatable. We do run into that around here.
I mean, I am on Linux, so it's amazing my sound works at all.
Does Darwin count as BSD?
I think the answer is mostly.
So to your request there, Josh, yeah, if you grab that picture from my slides, I think the slides are all either Apache or MIT. Take it. Cheers.
Is there nothing else? Should we end it and give back 10 minutes?
I think so. Give you 10 minutes to put up a doodle poll.
No promises. I'll try.
I just keep giving you work.
I know.
You're never going to volunteer for anything
Yeah,
again.
no. All right. Bye.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody. Welcome aboard, Greg.
Suggest. Never mind. The doodle pollers left the building. See ya.